Hey everybody, welcome back. In this particular video, we want to talk to you about the ForAll function. This is about where things will start to get complicated for some of you that are very, very new to programming. For those of you that are used to programming, this function will potentially frustrate you because you're used to having a plethora of options available in traditional programming, and this is going to be quite limiting, and there is some ways of dealing with certain aspects of iteration and looping, but we'll get into all of that in just a minute. So I'm going to try to take the middle ground. So for those of you that are brand new, you should be able to grasp this. There is a function in here called patch that I have not covered yet in the series, but I will be. And I actually have other videos before this series talking about patch, but you can check those videos out as well. I'll put a link in the description for those videos once they become available. The main thing that we want to talk about here is ForAll. Okay, so ForAll, for those of you brand new to programming or brand new to anything having to deal with this type of stuff, you'll hear this fancy word in programming called iteration. All that means is to loop over something. So think of a spreadsheet. Think about rows in a table or rows in a sheet. So there could be 2 rows, there could be 2 billion rows. I hope not. Probably crash. Matter of fact, Excel won't even hold it. But in any event, one or many rows could be existing in a table. And then for each, and that's the key word, for each of those, and that's really the key word that's used in a lot of other programming, is called for each. It's called a for each loop or for each iteration, but in Power Platform, replace the word each with the word all. And so for each, other programming languages, yay, PowerFX, for all. So for all means to take a list of something. Could be a collection, it could be a table, it could be a table in Dataverse, it could be a SharePoint list, it could be a plethora of things. The point is, it needs to be a table or a collection or a list of something, and then you'll go for each row, do something with that row. Okay, so with that being said, let me show you the code behind table. So table is going to create a 4-column table. And in this table, in each of the rows, we got a widget A, a cost of 5. Anyway, you can read all of this for yourself. One thing to note, I am putting a blank value in here for the margin. Now, the keyword value, I don't think I covered it yet. Maybe I did. Value is essentially just a way of setting a data type. I need this to be a number, an integer, because a margin is going to be a calculation that I'm going to perform in this ForAll for each of these rows. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I just want to let you know that if I use just blank here in this context, it will throw all kinds of errors to me, so I had to make that blank value a data type of integer. So I had to use the key function, or the function called value, to make all of that happen to avoid problems. Anyway, so what we need to do is create this table, and then in this table right here is where all of this data is going to show up. I'm going to hold the Alt key down, I'm going to press table, and now you can see this information here. So I do have a margin column, but notice it's blank, but at least the placeholder for the in-memory table, if we come over here to collections and we look at this my col row and we click view table, we can see that I have all of this information here. Now, I didn't do anything with this my return yet, and this is what we're going to get into next. Now, this is where the ForAll function comes in. Now, I am making 2 passes at ForAll. I kept it simple. I didn't nest. There's lots of instances where you will need to nest ForAlls. So in some cases, you're going to loop through something, and then for that row, there may be a reason or a need to loop again for that. A good example might be, let's just say you have a table called contact, right? And the contact has an address field or related record that's held in an addresses table. And so there may be one or more addresses for a contact. So if you have a bunch of contacts in a table, you're going to iterate, do ForAll over the contacts, and then for each of those contacts inside of that particular contact, you may have to iterate and go over the loop of addresses. So this is a use case of where you might have to use nested ForAlls. I don't want to scare those of you that are new, but it's kind of more advanced. You'll get there. Just focus on a single dimension or a single use case of ForAll, and that's what I've done here for you, so you can start to wrap your mind's eye around all of this stuff. Okay, so this being said, let's click on the calculate. I tried to put some comments in here. I know this is a little squirrely. Now, the only thing I want you to focus on is this. I'm going to explain the rest of it, why, but the whole purpose of what I'm trying to show you here in this video is just that code right there. Okay? Now, in order to understand the rest of this, I need to kind of reference the documentation. So I'm going to come out of here, I'm going to press Alt, I'm going to press the documentation so we can go to the ForAll function. And I want you to notice this piece of information right here. It says the result of each formula in the evaluation is returned in a table. Okay, so that's the key word. So when you're iterating over something, Power Apps is returning this to a table. And if you don't capture that table in a variable or in a collection, it's going to be lost at or after runtime. So that's the reason for the code when you see, I don't know why that looks like that. Come here. That's the reason for the code when you see the clear collect my return. All I'm doing is I'm saying when I do this ForAll, the return value that this generates, I want to collect this in this variable. No, it's not really a variable, it's a collection called my return. Okay, and so that's the reason for this. Don't let this other code, wrapper code, scare you, but there's a reason for it. Now there's lots of use cases where you don't need to collect it. You simply just need to do what you need to do. But in this use case, I'm doing a calculation to get the margin. Okay, and so what I'm doing is, let's go back to the documentation so we can take a look at this. Okay, the syntax is quite simple in that ForAll takes two parameters. It says, what do you want to loop or iterate over? Remember I told you it needed a table, a collection, a list, or something, right? So that's what this is. And then the formula. Now I got a little jiggy with it or crazy with it. Not too bad. But I did a little bit something more than just a simple calculation. What I did is I'm saying ForAll and this my collection. Now that my col is created from this button. Okay, when I did declare collect, that's the my col. That's what this table that you're seeing on screen is based off of. Okay, so now when we look at the calculations or the calculate button, so we're saying ForAll on the collection. And then what I'm doing is I'm doing this as a record. Okay, so I'm saying record, giving it a key name of PD. This is going to be my product description or my product, and I'm setting its value to this record.product. Now you may be wondering, what is the word this record? It's a scoping method or scoping technique, so that when you think of it this way. Think of the table, and for each of the rows in that table, when you're on a particular row, you're dealing with that row or this row. So this row or this record, think of that synonymously one and the same, okay? And then the dot notation is saying which column in this row. And so I'm just saying, here is a key that I just made up. I could have called it foo. And I'm setting its value to the current rows in the product column, okay? That's all I'm doing there. And then the MG, I'm simply doing a calculation. Now you may be seeing all these parentheses and these dashes and all this other stuff, and it may be freaking you out, but don't get freaked out. It really has nothing to do with the ForAll function. I covered this earlier in the series, as a matter of fact, a full breakout series on operators. And these are mathematical operators. If you go back to junior high school, at least here in the United States. If you're in India or in Asia or in Europe, I'm not really quite sure, around the world, even Australia, when you learn PEMDAS. Here in the States we call it PEMDA. I think in Europe this is called something else, and I cannot remember for the life of me. All it means is the order of operations in which you should do mathematical calculations. And it's basically a way of denoting, do this first. Okay, so I don't want to, get too hung up here. So if you're in the US, you probably recognize what this is. If you're around the world, then you'll know how to equate this to something else. But PEMDAS is an acronym that means the order of which you should do mathematical operations. The P stands for parentheses. E is for exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and then subtraction. Okay, so that's the order in which you do the operation. So when you start to see what I'm doing up here, you'll notice I have a bunch of parentheses. So here's this first set of parentheses. Well, the outer set of parentheses, right? So we got it over here in this area, and then we've got it over here at the beginning. So what this is telling the computer to do is look here first, do this first. But inside of it, I have another set of parentheses. So then it's saying, oh, well, inside of the first group of parentheses, I see a second group. So I should do this mathematical calculation first. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking the cell column for the current row, this record, and I'm subtracting that same row, the cost column, and that is going to come up with whatever the number and the value is, okay? And then I go to the next outer layer of the parentheses. I'm going to divide that by the same row, the cost column, okay? And then that's going to come up with a number. And then finally, I'm going to do the multiplication, which is the last mathematical operation. And I'm going to multiply that times 10, which should be actually 100. And at that point, it's going to create all of that function information, okay? And so at the end of the day, you're going to get a numerical value that should be the margin percentage, okay? Don't worry about the formula of that. If it's not clear to you, that's fine too. Just know you could have done 1 plus 1. You could have done something very simple, like you see that I did here. I just did a simple assignment. I didn't do any math. But there's a plethora of use cases of why you might want to loop over something and do something for a particular row, and then you want to capture that off in a table so that later you can process that. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm doing another ForAll loop. And we haven't covered this yet in the series, but I will. Again, I have another video out there on Patch. But I'm basically just saying ForAll the my return. Okay, so here is where I collected the my return, right, from this first ForAll, and now I'm going to loop and iterate through that, and I'm going to patch the my call table. Now you may be saying, well, why didn't I just patch inside of here? Well, this is a problem, and the reason for that is that I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but just know that in a ForAll loop, you can't provide and do multiple operations to this my call column, right? Because I'm doing the ForAll on this. This would be a good use case of where I might use with, but that is really more complicated. We haven't covered the with function yet, so in a later series maybe I'll circle back, try to remember or use this example when I use the with, and I'll show you how to use with and ForAll together. But nonetheless, I'm doing this as separate operations because this video is literally just about ForAll. And if we look at this, we're just patching the other table, the original table, and I'm just looking up the current product where the PD column is equal to, again, this record, meaning this row of the product. Now, what is this record? It's referring to the original my call, right? And so I'm looking up this, product, and I want it to equal this PD. And the PD is the column inside of the my return table. Okay, so when it's all said and done, basically what I'm doing is I'm setting the margin, which I originally set when I did the table, remember value and blank, and now I'm actually updating it with the calculated version that I did here in the table. So let's go ahead and press calculate and let's see what happens. Okay, so that happened pretty quick. There's only 3 rows, but notice that the my return, let's look at that table, right? So this is like a temporary table, and so I kept the PD, and you may be saying, well, why didn't I just do the calculation? And I could have done that, but if I didn't create the PD column, I wouldn't have a way of matching data from this table to data from this table. So I used that, and that's why I needed to do it that way, so that when I did the lookup, I had something to match on. So when I did the patch, this is why I was, if you look here, lookup, I'm saying, product equals PD. So that's a way of doing it. Another way I could have done it, if I had an index or a primary key or something, I could have used that. But I didn't have it, so this is the only thing that I knew that was unique in this particular data set. For you, you're going to have to make all of these determinations for yourself. But long story short, this is exactly how you should think about the ForAll. Make sure you read through the documentation. I covered a good chunk of it, where we talked about the return value, we talked about the syntax, and then we also discussed a little bit about, where was it here? It was something that was referring to this record. I was trying to, record scope, here we go. So when you're dealing with the record scope, that's exactly what's talking about this record or this keyword. It's in here somewhere. There's a very specific area. That's what I was trying to, or wanting to show you here. Here we go. Fields of the record currently being processed are available within the formula. Use the this record operator or simply reference fields by name as you would any other value. Okay, so what that means is, and I did this way in this particular video, is to help you. So instead of saying this record, I simply could have just said sold or sell. I didn't have to say this record. But because I wanted to explain it to you, to show it to you, both of them work. And that's what it was talking about there. You can either use this record or you can just use the column name straight on. All right, so this video is long enough. Hopefully this was clear. If not, please leave me a comment in the comment below. Like, subscribe to the video, and or rather the channel. In any event, that's it for this video. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.